Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kapijana Vallabha Girivaradari Kapijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Now we're going to try. You want to like to start?
Should I say anything? Just dive right into it.
It's up to you. You're the initiator.
I'm the MC Das. Hare Krishna. So we are going to carry on what we did last night, in case anyone's watching online. No one's here in the audience, but we've been reading this book together. Jamal, Balan Prabhu, and I have been reading this book together. And so we are going to carry on where we left off last night. And if anyone has any questions, they can submit them in the comment section on this live stream. And I have my phone here, so I will check that, and we will try to respond to any questions or comments as they appear. Okay. Where are we again? It must be
92.
Okay, this section is called Seva, Sevaka, and Sevja. Once a crowd of people gathered on the bank of a fast river and stared helplessly as a man who had fallen in desperately floundered for his life. "Don't worry, my friend, I'll save you," cried a daring young onlooker. The well-meaning gentleman leaped into the water like a brave soul and quickly swam to the drowning man. Reaching out, he deftly pulled off the non-swimmer's coat as he was about to go under for the third and final time. Taking a strong grasp of the drowning man's jacket, the young man swam back to the shore, leaving the poor fellow to a watery grave. Beaming a triumphant and proud smile, he held the soaked coat before the crowd on the riverbank, who received him with only jeers. One horrified lady shrieked, "You have saved only the poor fellow's coat." Hopefully everyone follows what I just said. Someone's drowning. A young man says, "I'll save you," goes out there into the water and grabs the drowning person's coat and swims back, thinking he did something worthwhile. Somehow the poor fool remained ignorant of his blunder as he marched off to a dry cleaner's to have the coat cleaned and pressed. The moral is that so-called gurus who devote their attention only to humanitarian activities actually do no permanent good for the people they try to help. It is true that social workers provide meals for the hungry, clothing for the poor, and hospitals for the sick, but by such activities only the bodily standard of life is improved. The real problem concerning the soul enshrouded in ignorance is never cured by mundane altruism, and the poor souls they try to save remain condemned to suffer their own karma in the repeated cycle of birth and death. Therefore, one should investigate whether or not the spiritual path he is considering is considered with bodily or spiritual upliftment. One should investigate whether or not the spiritual path he is considering is concerned with bodily or spiritual upliftment. Remembering the above frank example, all paths but that of pure devotion to God, which is the soul's natural function, should be instantly rejected uncompromisingly. After many, many years of penance and austerity, the great Mahayogi perfected the art of walking upon water. As hundreds of villagers gathered to watch the mystic's performance, the town's old boatman sailed by him. Yours is a 10 paisa trick, the boatman scoffed. For 10 paisa is the price of a trip across the lake in my boat. Similarly, the bona fide guru never relies upon cheap tricks to mystify and charm a gullible following. Rather, he draws, like a magnet, sincere disciples by virtue of the love he harbors in his heart for Sri Krishna. In order to run smoothly, a train requires 2 parallel tracks. Similarly, if one wants to ride aboard the Back to Godhead Express, then the 2 tracks of Guru and Krishna are required. Although modern science has developed a monorail train which runs on only 1 track, it serves to strengthen our example. Consider the following words of Lord Krishna from Srimad Bhagavatam. The spiritual master must be accepted not only as my representative, but as my very self. That's from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 17, Text 22. Because the pure devotee never concocts, but teaches Krishna's message as it is, he is in this sense, one with the Supreme Lord, one with God's will. So the example is saying that if one wants to go back to Godhead, back to the spiritual world, there's 2 tracks the person must travel on. Just like a train. The train has 2 tracks, and so a person must ride on those 2 tracks. And those 2 tracks are Guru, God, and Guru and God. Guru, the spiritual master, and Krishna, God. So Guru and God, those are the 2 tracks. And so then he carries the analogy carries it on by saying that nowadays there's even a train with 1 track. And he says actually that's appropriate too, because really that Guru and Krishna, they're really just 1 track in another sense. So he quotes this verse from the Bhagavatam and says, the spiritual master must be accepted not only as my representative, but as my very self. So really the Guru and Krishna in one sense you could say are the same track. Not because the Guru is God, but because he is so purely and chastely the representative of God that everything is the same. Sometimes grasses grow over the surface of an abandoned well, and a careless passerby, not noticing the blind well, may accidentally step and fall into it. He can be saved only by one who is outside the well, and who lowers down a long rope. Similarly, if we want to extricate ourselves from the blind well of material life, we require the assistance of a liberated, pure devotee who can save us with the rope of Krishna consciousness. Just as one trapped in the well cannot help another so trapped, so sheltering ourselves from the feet of another soul who is as conditioned as we are will not save us from birth and death. Sheltering ourselves at the feet of another soul who is as conditioned as we are will not save us from birth and death. Iron filings may point this way and that. But if a magnet is held near these filings, they immediately arrange themselves neatly in one direction. Similarly, a great acharya arranges orderliness out of the chaos of a corrupt society. He lines everyone up on the road back to home and marches them back to Godhead. Although the earth is supported by the hoods of Lord Ananta, still it is sometimes seen to shake. But the pure devotee's faith in Krishna is never shaken. Srila Vyasadeva says, Krishnastu Bhagavan Svayam. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's from Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Gita says, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddesher janatishtati. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. And who is that Ishvara, or Supreme Lord? Shri Brahma Samhita says, Ishvara Parama Krishna. The Supreme Lord is Krishna. And what is our duty to Sri Krishna? Lord Krishna himself instructs in Bhagavad Gita, Man manava mad bhakto. Always think of me and become my devotee. So the instruction is clear. Krishna is God, and we are his servants. In the spiritual sky, one may find only seva, devotional service, sevaka, those rendering service, and Sevja, the Supreme Lord, who mercifully receives all service. So even in the spiritual sky, there will be these three things. The service, the one giving service, and the one receiving the service. And that's the one receiving is God, Krishna. If even a great mathematician begins an equation with the wrong formula, then every operation will be faulty. Similarly, it is impossible for a karmi to come to the proper goal because his basis is sense gratification. His very life breath will be misused. However, no one is so poor that he cannot say Hare Krishna when he breathes in order to offer his breath unto Sri Krishna's service. In the spiritual sky, 1 minus 1 equals 1, and 1 plus 1 equals 1. That Supreme One is Krishna, and he is the sum total of everything. The Supreme Lord does not become diminished through expanding his energies everywhere. He remains the summum bonum, or the ultimate source of energies. Shri Pushpanjali says, Om Purnam Adam Purnamidam. The Supreme Lord is perfect and complete. That's the invocation mantra from Shri Pushpanjali. It is a mathematical truth that 2 plus 2 equals 4, and 3 plus 1 equals 4. Things equal to the same thing are equal to each other. Similarly, there have been many saintly teachers who have in the past presented externally different prescriptions for attaining Krishna consciousness. As old wine is sometimes kept in new bottles, so this most ancient message is sometimes presented in a fresh way to appeal to a particular time and clime. The acharyas are expert judges of time and circumstances, but their ultimate message has always been one: lovingly serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maybe I'll stop there.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Lord Jesus said, you must love God with your whole heart and your whole soul and with your whole mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. For this is from the Bible, the book of Matthew, chapter 22, verse 27 and 28. As heat and light are ever present in fire, or as sweetness is always found in sugar, so service to Krishna is the inescapable, undeniable, immortal principle of the spirit soul. When the living entity perceives the absolute nature of this truth as his Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion, he realizes that he has been looking for a loving relationship with Krishna since time immemorial. By the grace of Sri Guru, he then surrenders his all to the Lord and thereby prepares himself for going back home, back to Godhead. From atop the mango tree, the fruit picker hands down the ripened mango to another fruit picker beneath him. High up in the tree, from one worker to another, the sweet mango is handed down, 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 until it reaches the packer on the ground unharmed. This message of pure devotional service is in a similar way coming originally from Lord Krishna, handed gently down from one acharya to the next. This sweet mango of Krishna consciousness has been delivered to us by Srila Prabhupada via the great unbreakable chain of disciplic succession. When you speak with a beloved family member on the telephone, you have faith that the voice at the other end of the line actually is coming from your relative, although he is unseen by you. Similarly, via the transcendental wire of disciplic succession, which stretches beyond time, comes the immortal instructions of Krishna. We should therefore have faith that the speaker of Bhagavad Gita is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Srila Prabhupada is his representative. A mango becomes sweeter when a parrot eats it by the influence of the parrot's beak. Similarly, whenever the Lord's pastimes are heard from the lips of a pure devotee, the sweetness is increased, and the submissive hearer derives immeasurable bliss. On the moon there are innumerable rivers of heavenly nectar. Similarly, from the moon-like faces of pure devotees flow the nectarian descriptions of Krishna's spiritual pastimes. In bygone ages, Indian kings sometimes selected a baby girl and fed her insignificant doses of strong poison. Over time, the amount of poison was slowly increased, and when the girl blossomed into a beautiful young woman, large doses of the poison would not affect her. Such a Visha Kanya, or poisonous virgin, was then employed as a weapon against inimical politicians. She would seduce them, and by her kisses they would die. Similarly, the pure devotee possesses such potency that when descriptions of Krishna are heard from his lotus lips, one's life as a sense gratifier dries up and withers. This marks the death of the false ego and the birth of spiritual life. Interesting. During World War I, many Russian soldiers in Europe saw for the first time water taps and light bulbs. Upon returning to their homeland with those souvenirs, they attempted to produce light and water by screwing them into the wall. However, it was no avail, for neither was linked to the source. In the same way, one who claims to be a reservoir of spiritual energy cannot actually be so unless he is connected to the God source, Shri Krishna, through the medium of initiation by a pure devotee of the Lord. Pure silver wire conducts electricity without resistance, while an impure or alloyed wire decreases the current. Similarly, the full potency of disciplic succession is experienced when the message of Krishna consciousness is heard from the lips of a pure devotee of the Lord. One who is not 100% free from materialistic hankering cannot be as expert at delivering the message. A simple child mistakes that electricity miraculously comes out of a hole in the wall. An older brother realizes that it has come into the house by means of a wire suspended high above the street. The father knows that it originates from the city's central power supply, but the engineer knows that electricity is merely a manifestation of man's ability to harness the great power of nature. A sadhu, however, is still more intelligent. He sees that this wondrous manifestation of material energy called electricity has been created from the mind of God. Although electricity is everywhere, this is of no practical value to one whose house is without lights. The help of an expert electrical engineer is required to harness the current and light the house. Similarly, Krishna's energies are omnipresent, but the guidance of an expert spiritual master is needed to show him to us. Needed to show Krishna to us. People have always been surrounded by electricity, but were forced to tolerate the absence of electrical luxuries until its recent discovery. In the same way, Lord Shri Krishna is ever before us, but we needed our spiritual master's help to see him. Thousands are today expanding their awareness of Krishna, the all-beautiful Supreme Lord, through the chanting of Hare Krishna as engineered by one lone pure devotee. A postman always gives a letter to the addressee without opening the envelope to change the message within. A bank teller gives a requested amount of money to the owner of a savings account on demand without ever considering giving too much or too little. Similarly, the pure devotee of the Lord presents without adulteration the actual message of Krishna as it is. For our part, we merely have to accept it without mental speculation. As a queen is followed by her maidservants, so the pure devotee is always followed by the goddess of wealth, learning, and liberation, who offer service to him on folded knees. Such a pure devotee may sometimes appear as penniless, although the wealth of Vaikuntha is at his disposal. The devotee is in fact so rich in love of God that not only can his transcendental treasury never be plundered, but the more he gives it to others, the more it increases. A devotee may not care for mundane scholarship, but there are none who can match his wisdom. He is automatically blessed with the knowledge of a true understanding of all things. He may be a householder with a business, but due to his unflinching faith in Krishna, he is never entangled. He knows the real meaning of renunciation, that everything must be offered to Krishna. The pure devotee is just like a chataki bird described in Sanskrit literature. Just as the chataki bird drinks only water that falls from the clouds, so the pure devotee, ever fixed at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, thinks only of him, and thereby drinks the nectar of the rain of Krishna's mercy. Just as the chataki bird prays for the cloud regardless of whether it showers, rains, or throws a thunderbolt, so the pure devotee accepts the mercy of the Lord in whatever form it takes. Thus, Nirvishesh, I have described to you the necessity of having a bona fide spiritual master, his duties and some differences between a genuine sadhu and a pretender. Now listen as I explain the duties of a candidate who takes shelter of a pure devotee, as a ship upon a windswept sea takes shelter of a safe harbor.
You have any comments about this? No? Okay. All right, the next section. Can flies follow Garuda? When a young man marries, he automatically acquires all of the relatives of his wife. Some of these adore him, while others seem to automatically hate him. Anybody have this experience? I know you two haven't, but... Similarly, when someone becomes a devotee, he naturally becomes the darling of thousands of other servants of the Lord. But the atheists, unprovoked, make the devotee the object of their scorn. As flies are unable to follow Garuda, so even the great atheists, despite their so-called material advancement, find it impossible to follow Krishna's devotees. As an Ayurvedic physician can tell the condition of his patients by checking their pulse rate, so the spiritual master knows the pulse of each of his disciples. A young child was once taken to the hospital to have a tumor removed. When the boy saw the doctor's scalpel, he mistook the doctor for an enemy. Yet after the operation cured the boy, he recognized the doctor to be a very good friend indeed. Similarly, we're all suffering from the skin disease of having a material body. And in such a state of mind, it is often difficult for us to comprehend what a genuine friend we have in the spiritual master. But when, by the Guru's divine grace, the disease of material bondage is cut away, the spiritually free disciple realizes the inestimable value of the pure devotee's guidance. So this just reminded me of when Prabhupada was recently I was hearing when Prabhupada was in Rishikesh, there was there was some woman, she was a part of a religious group, she came to Prabhupada and she was asking Prabhupada what does he do for the good of humanity. And then Prabhupada challenged her and he said, what do you know about the good of humanity? He said, your help is like blowing on the boil. And then he said, you need to take a scalpel and remove the boil. And he was referring to, as Mukunacharana was just reading recently, this he was reading about the foolish man who saw a drowning man in a nearby river, and he grabbed his coat. And he ran out and, he was holding the coat up, the soaking wet coat. And of course, it said the man, he entered the watery grave or whatever. So in other words, he didn't save the man. So that example is an example Prabhupada would give about people simply taking care of the material body through different means, and not focusing on the spirit soul. So that's what Srila Prabhupada was referring to. That what is your help doing? Your help is like blowing on the boil. You need to remove it. Because so in other words, he's saying you're not really helping. You think you're helping, but people are still in ignorance and people are still suffering. And the fact is that Krishna consciousness, it takes care of everything. It's not that Krishna consciousness just takes care of one aspect of our existence. It takes care of everything. So, but this is what unfortunate people subscribe to. They think that, oh, just focus on the material, everything, material platform, and then you'll be happy, you'll be satisfied, and the world will be satisfied. But that's obviously not the case. So, anyways, this was reminding me of that because I was just reading how the doctor was taking the scalpel to the boy's boil. So, of course, in other words, sometimes they say, like, the truth hurts. So, but that hurting is just symptomatic of, you could say the false ego being pinched, but the false ego and the ignorance of the false ego has to be removed so one could be situated on real transcendental knowledge and experience real happiness. So, that's what the Guru does. A disciple who follows the austerities prescribed by the spiritual master is blessed with quick advancement in spiritual life. Simply by keeping his part of the agreement, the sincere disciple is guaranteed the assistance of the spiritual master, life after life. Just as one is not bound to another who has broken a legal contract, so the spiritual master is not bound to deliver from material bondage any disciple who will not follow his instructions. Devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement follow these four regulative principles: no gambling or mental speculation, no illicit sex, no eating of meat, fish, or eggs, and no intoxication. In addition, they chant the Maha Mantra on their japamala or beads, 16 rounds daily, 108 mantras per round. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In Bengal, wild tigers are often captured in the Sundarbans forest and then taken to the animal trainer, put into a cage. A tiger starved to near death. Finally, when the wretched beast is too weak to stand, the animal trainer appears with a whip and beats the tiger within an inch of its life. Seems pretty cruel. Then the tiger is regularly fed and his health is restored. At this point, the trainer may simply appear before the beast with the whip to make the tiger remember the agonizing ordeal. Thus, he becomes docile and calm. In the same way, the ravenous senses, likened to ferocious tigers, must be strictly trained through tapasya, voluntary discipline and restraint. Yeah, so this is an important point because people, like, in the spiritual path, they say, oh, okay, I want my some people, they don't even recognize it, that they have, you could say, dirty things in their heart, which means, material contaminations within their heart. But if someone realizes that, selfishness and greed and anger and all that, if somebody comes to the point of realizing that, then they say, I want it to be removed, right? So therefore I'm engaging in spiritual practices. That's one of the reasons. But, like you could say, mere passive prayers will not, pacify our heart. In other words, it won't make our heart peaceful. Like somebody's got their feet up on their lazy boy recliner or whatever. Huh? They got their feet up on their lazy boy recliner, or their whatever it may be. They're sitting in a regular chair, just kind of, passively trying to pray. But that passive praying is not good enough. It's not going to pacify the heart. It's not going to give us Krishna. In other words, it's, as Prabhupada would say many times, he said, it's Krishna consciousness is a war. He said that that's the problem. People think it's peacetime, but it's not peacetime, it's wartime. And Prabhupada therefore would also call the temples bases in which devotees could come and, land their airplanes, fill up transcendental books, bombs, Prabhupada would call them, fly into the sky and drop all the bombs on the cities. Now, of course, these aren't bombs that kill people physically, but these are spiritual bombs, books. So, in other words, it's a battle. But again, there's nothing wrong with the battle. Sometimes, I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover, right? I want peace, man. Give me my lazy boy, or give me my comfy bed, or give me my comfy mat in the ashram, or give me this, or give me that, or just, trying to play it safe or something, like hide out. Everybody's hiding out now, right? But trying to hide out. But there's nothing wrong with fighting. I mean, it's healthy to fight. It's healthy to exert energy. And that's what everybody's doing anyways. Anybody who's ever become wealthy, anybody who's ever become famous, anybody who's ever become, generally speaking, they all fought for it. So, like Amazon. Everybody and their mother knows Amazon. Right? And they're probably everybody and their mother's buying stuff from Amazon. That guy just didn't, sit around passively and, it seems like a good idea. Maybe this would work one day, and let me sit back on my, at my house and think about it and play it safe. No, that guy, what's his name?
I forgot. Bezos?
Whatever his name is, yeah. It's not that important. That guy, he really pushed himself, really fought for it. And now he's, right, number one distributor. So, you have to strive.
Well, do you have your phone so that you can be commented here?
The ability to walk is born with the baby, and within a couple of years, the child learns walking through practice. Similarly, Krishna consciousness is eternally present within the conditioned soul, but through practicing the rules and regulations of bhakti yoga, we can realize spontaneous attraction for the Lord. As frogs begin to croak when thunder is heard, so all devotees rise early in the morning at the sound of a bell and pray in the temple by chanting Hare Krishna upon their prayer beads. If you don't got a bell, you could use your alarm clock. The devotional chants recited by devotees are called mantras in Sanskrit. This means that which delivers the mind from material bondage. The mind may be as deceitful as a thief running and yelling, "Stop, thief." Or the mind can be the cause of emancipation as well, depending upon how it is trained. The mind is just like a blank check. It alone has no value. As a check may be written for any amount, so the mind can be made priceless by meditation upon Krishna, or rendered worthless through letting it dwell upon the objects of the senses. Thus, through submissive oral reception, that is, by listening attentively to the spiritual master, the disciple eventually sees the truth. It is said that the dog sees with his nose, a karmi or materialist sees with his eyes, but a devotee sees with his ears. It is only by its steadiness that the ocean, through regular high and low tides, can grind coastal ranges into sand. In just the same way, the devotee, through steady service to God, grinds the hard and steep mountain of accrued karma within his heart to dust, and washes it away with the tide of love of Krishna. Sweet water, frequented by the crocodiles and sandalwood trees, inhabited by snakes, are avoided by the wise. Similarly, the spiritual master knows that sense gratification may seduce a neophyte, so he sternly warns of the dangers of a life wasted pursuing sensual pleasures. What is the use of lighting a fire while pouring water on the wood? What is the benefit of trying to exploit the senses and develop Krishna consciousness simultaneously? One who gives up something dear to himself for the sake of a friend becomes dear to that friend. Similarly, one who abnegates sense pleasure for the sake of Krishna becomes dear to the Lord. A pilot knows that he must stay directly on course, for if he begins a trip even a few feet off course, then by the time he nears his destination, he will be miles from the airport. Similarly, the serious devotee does not deviate even slightly in his service for seemingly trivial misconceptions formed early can be the cause of a fall down later on. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Guru Krishna Kripa Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. By the mercy of Guru and Krishna, we are given the seed of devotional service. Madhya Lila 19:151. Chaitanya Charitamrita. As a good gardener is always diligent to remove weeds from his flower bed, so by the grace of the pure devotee we may learn the art of transcendental gardening. The technique is this. The weeds of sense desire are removed from the garden of the budding creeper of devotion, which later sprouts the fruit of transcendental love. The water that is used to nourish this creeper of devotion, the Bhakti Lata, is the water of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Of course, a creeper requires a tree around which to entwine itself. Thus the creeper of spiritual love entwines itself about the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. Naturally, there is always danger to a delicate creeper arising from forest animals who wish to nibble at its tender leaves. Therefore, a fence must be built around the creeper for its protection. Similarly, the wild animals of offenses, breaking the rules of devotional service, are avoided by erecting the fence of faithfully following the regulative principles prescribed by the spiritual master. And when devotees feel in their hearts the pure joy and bliss of Krishna consciousness, their laughter is like the falling of flowers from the creeper of devotional love. A seed once fried within a pan can never again germinate. Similarly, all dormant seeds of lust are removed from the neophyte devotee's heart when intense love for Krishna blazes forth. The influence of material nature has covered the living entity, and thus it is as if the living entity were always in a blazing fire. But by the process of seriously discharging devotional service, this influence can be removed, just as wooden sticks which cause a fire are themselves consumed by it. Bhagavatam 3:27-23. So this is talking about the Bhakti Lata Bij. So it says that the conditioned soul is transmigrating from species to species, from planet to planet, undergoing their karmic reactions. And it says by the mercy of Krishna, one comes in contact with the bona fide spiritual master, and by the mercy of the spiritual master, one's able to come in contact with Krishna, or obtain Krishna consciousness. But, the spiritual master plants the seed, of course this is an analogy, plants the seed in the heart, and then what grows? What grows is the bhakti plant, you could say, and eventually which produces the fruit of love for Krishna. But in order for a plant to grow, one has to water it regularly. And similarly, we have to water that Bhakti Lata Bij, that seed of devotion, by chanting Hare Krishna mainly. And of course, although chanting Hare Krishna is very simple, there are certain things we could do wrong. That by doing those things wrong, we won't actually get the fruit of love for Krishna. We'll get something else. We'll get different types of fruits, which we may not want. And therefore, there's so many books that describe the glories of the holy name, the science of chanting the holy name. It's not like some mundane song and you just sing it kind of mindlessly or aimlessly, or you're like at a rock concert or something, or and you're just singing some lyrics. But there's a lot more to it than just singing or chanting. Although we say, okay, just chant and hear, okay, that's the beginning, but there's actually a lot more to it. And so many books describe that, like what am I talking about? Like when I'm saying there's a lot more to it. So there's books like by Borijan Prabhu, one Prabhupada disciple. He has this book called Japa, Japa, Borijan Prabhu, Japa book. And then there's a book by, of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, our Prabhupada's guru's father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Harinam Chintamani. And there's so many other books. Shivaram Swami has a book, it's called Chant More. So anyways, there's so many books that we could read and meditate on, and in this way we could increase our knowledge of the holy name and our experience. And then we'll actually be able to get that fruit for love of Krishna. In a forest fire, all four-legged animals run away, but the snakes, being able to flee, must perish. Similarly, the snakes of sin residing in the heart are destroyed by the fire of Krishna consciousness. When a Brahmin rubs two arani sticks together, the resultant friction produces fire. In just the same way, when there is friction between the devotees and non-devotees, Lord Krishna appears like fire to destroy the atheist. Krishna, the killer of numerous demons such as Madhu, Putana, Mura, and Kamsa, kindly kills all the demons of doubt that may arise within the mind of his faithful devotee. Demoniac men and the aggressive gurus cheat neophytes by preaching a pseudo-religion based upon sense indulgence. Their cheap and false doctrines are rejected by beginners, if they are even a little sincere, just as Sri Krishna slew the disguised witch Putana in his babyhood. So Putana looked good, very beautiful, but she was bad. Krishna slew the disguised witch Putana. So similarly, devotees reject false religionists who are compared to be like Putana. The demon Shakatasura hid himself within a cart in an attempt to crush baby Krishna, yet the Lord with one deft kick knocked over the cart, crushing the demon. Similarly, the crushing loads of empiricism and philosophical speculation, stumbling blocks on the path of devotional service, are overturned even in the early stages of Krishna consciousness. Next, the whirlwind demon Trinavarta, whose circular motion blocked the sun, attempted to attack infant Krishna by carrying him off. But the baby Lord made himself so heavy that the demon fell from the sky to his demise. Similarly, even a beginner's knowledge of the Lord is heavy enough to pull down the blinding whirlwind of the concocted and confusing false philosophies of Mayavad. As the devotee develops in stature, he may occasionally fall victim to false pride, abandoning humility. Just as Lord Krishna in his youth slew the stampeding horse demon Keshi, so Lord Krishna brings about the death of false pride and arrogance in the hearts of his developing devotees. Fire is used to clean certain still from all inferior adulterants. Similarly, the fire of devotion eventually renders unalloyed a candidate's devotion to God. Of course, it cannot be expected that any two persons will take to Krishna consciousness with the same degree of readiness. Fire ignites dry grass, green grass, and wet grass differently. Similarly, those persons who are in the mode of goodness are like dry grass, which is very easily ignited. Due to their past piety? They are at once able to perceive the value of Krishna consciousness. Those in the mode of passion are like green grass, which burns only after much contact with fire. Due to their affection for sensual pleasure, it is difficult for them to adapt to a life of even mild austerity. And those in the mode of ignorance are like wet green grass, which is almost impossible to ignite. Because they are illusioned by the mode of darkness, they are not able to understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness until after much association with devotees. Lord Rishabhadev instructed his 100 sons, "My dear boys, please do not spend your lives running after sense gratification. Such bodily pleasures are fully available to the stool eaters, the hogs. This human life is meant for tapasya, or voluntary sense restraint, as a result of which you will be able to enjoy unlimited bliss." Bhagavatam 5.5.1. Of course, blindly obeying rules of piety is also a useless waste of time if love of God is not thereby developed. Those who are addicted to this or that religious system, but who never become spontaneously drawn to the Lord, are like chained dogs. Just as one can never collect all the droplets of dew on the grass, so mere piety is an ineffective means to counteract sin. Guru Maharaj has told us of an actual incident that occurred in India. Two English-speaking gentlemen had a conversation in which one party, knowing that no English-speaking person could hear, admitted cheating the other. The other hearer had been a brahmachari, celibate monk, who did not speak English. Later the monk was called to court of law, and simply by the strong memory he had gained through celibacy, he was able to repeat the conversation through mimicking the sounds he had heard. Thus the guilty party was established. Our grand spiritual master, a lifelong brahmachari, was able to repeat exactly word for word any passage from books which he had read more than 30 years previously. These examples demonstrate the value of preserving the vital forces of the body in favor of Krishna consciousness through celibacy. Not only is memory enhanced through brahmacharya, but intelligence, health, longevity, and bodily strength as well. If a tree loses its sap in its youth, it can never grow to be the strong, beautiful, and fruit-bearing tree it might otherwise have been. Similarly, if vital forces of the body are lost before attaining manhood, one may be weak and non-productive throughout life. The Vedic history, Mahabharata, Hare Krishna, tells the story of the chaste wife, Savitri. When Lord Yamaraj, king of the dead, came to claim the soul of her husband, she followed the Lord of departed souls and refused to go back. Lord Yama told her that if she would cease following, he would grant her a boon. She said, "Then grant me 100 sons." "Granted," replied Yama. "Now please return to the land of the living." She replied, "I am a chaste wife and cannot have sons but by my husband. Therefore you must give him back to me." Lord Yama had to admit that he had been outsmarted. By her faithfulness and chastity, Savitri was able to force the god of death to restore her husband's life. She lived with him and their 100 sons happily for many years. Similarly, remaining true to one's vows of undeviated bhakti will certainly help one to conquer the Lord of Death and find eternal happiness with Lord Krishna. Pretty funny. So Savitri's husband died. He's being taken down to Yamaraj's place, and then she was following him somehow. I don't know how, but she was following him. And then Yamaraj said, "Oh, what are you doing? You have to go back. You know, I'm taking your husband." And she said, and then she was so determined, so Yamaraj said, "Okay, well, what do you want?" And then she said, "Give me 100 sons." And he said, "Okay, fine, granted, just go back, to earth. Let me take your husband." And then she said, "Okay, you granted me 100 sons, but I'm a chaste wife, so I have to have those 100 sons with my husband. So you have to give me my husband back." And then Yamaraj said, "Okay, fine, you outsmarted me. Take him back." Interesting. So that idea is like we have to be devoted, dedicated to following true to our vows in devotional service, and that will help us conquer Yamaraj, Lord of Death, and find eternal happiness with Krishna. O Nirvishesh, I hope you have now seen the value of following the true spiritual master's instructions. Lord Krishna himself set the example for the sake of all people for all time when he accepted Shri Sandipani Muni as his very own Sat Gurudev. This has been described by Narada Muni. In the beginning of the universe, the cloud of Lord Brahma formed from the ocean of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. The divine wisdom Brahma imbibed from Krishna was disseminated like rain throughout the world. This downpour of knowledge caused a great lake to form upon the mountain of Sandipani Muni. The Guru's instructions to Krishna are like a reservoir which forms streams and returns as a great river to mix with its source, the ocean of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You have any comments or questions? Nobody's sitting? Nobody comments or questions here? Huh?
How do you
So you have any comments or questions? Well, I don't think there's much time to wait. Speaking of Mike. Why? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with keeping it to yourself? Why do you want to keep it to yourself? That's all right. No, I think you should say it. It's not good to hold things in. It's unhealthy. That's what women, anyways, but sometimes somebody said that, they said, someone was joking or something, I don't know, but anyways, this isn't such a serious comment, but somebody said this to me, they were joking with me, they said, oh, that's why you men generally die earlier. Because you guys keep everything in, you don't talk about it. And she was saying that us women, we talk about things, so, we get things out, so it's a lot more healthy, Anyways, that's what so you better, it's for your health, you better say it.
You read this one kind of a big deal. This one is kind of a little bit back. But you had...
I don't even know what you said so far at all, what you just said, so I don't know about the audience. I have no idea what you just said.
Sorry. No, I was kind of just like muttering to myself. But, so you had read a while back, sweet water frequented by crocodiles and sandalwood trees inhabited by snakes are avoided by the wise. Similarly, the spiritual master knows that sense gratification may seduce a neophyte, so he sternly warns of the dangers of a life wasted pursuing sensual pleasures. So, because, one starting out on the spiritual path, because they're just just beginning to exit the material ocean, or trying to make their exit out of the material ocean, or being tossed by the waves of the material ocean. They are frequently, they're, like this is saying, they're frequently tempted by whatever desires that they're previously wallowing in, or whatever desires may arise. But it's important to know that sense pleasure
is a dream.
Is ultimate. Yeah.
Sense pleasure is a dream. Krishna
why is this
supreme.
just now? I hope that was picking up what I was saying.
Sense pleasure is a dream. Krishna supreme. The aim is prem, and the way is the name.
Yeah, exactly. So ultimately, all sense pleasure is in the mode of ignorance, and one may say, "Oh, well, one may feel themselves to be so-called happy or satisfied in their sense pleasure, however subtle or gross, but it is ultimately, it will always, 100% of the time, without a doubt, be futile or obsolete, the pursuit of sense gratification, this pursuit of sense pleasure, because in the end, if we engage in this sense pleasure, we will always meet with suffering. It has to be that way. That is the nature of this world that we live in. So, it doesn't end there though. One has to kind of awaken one has to work to awaken their intelligence, and the way that, good way that I find that can be done is to, obviously this is hearing. That's the first step in purifying oneself, the process of hearing and chanting, particularly hearing of the glories of the Lord, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and hearing the Lord's pastimes. They give one something to, it serves as a reminder as to why we are undergoing the austerity that we are in it. serves as a goal to keep in mind, and that should help us to keep our vow in austerity, or refraining from sense gratification, or going back to a life of sense gratification, or yada yada. So anyway, I don't know if that was valuable to anyone but me, but
Yeah, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.